Well, hello there, and welcome to WTA Weekly. And I am very happy to see that it is Jack Edward alongside me today. Jack, how are you doing?
Good, thanks, Nick. Yeah, great. What was that? What's just happened? What's this little thumb? Is that from me doing that?
That's something that it's something that do you have a Mac or an iPad, like an Apple product?
I do, yeah, I do.
Yeah, so it's part of their video calling software. It's included in that. So
How can I not do it again? Okay, whatever. Anyway, that was cool. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm good, thanks, Nick. Just off the court today, doing a bit of coaching, so I'm fresh-aired. I'm ready to go. Yeah, let's talk some WTA.
Tennis brain fully engaged. That's what we like to see. All right. Well, let's start with the main headline of WTA this week, which is Abu Dhabi, the 500 level event, main kind of warm up we're going to have for the Middle East double that starts. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about the Middle East double kind of later. But what I wanted to go forward is, the headline is Elena Rybakina has won it. Elena Rybakina and Jelena Ostapenko are the only two women to have won 500 titles this year. And we've had 4 already. She's done an amazing job. Interesting that her and Ostapenko, similar runs in the last couple of weeks, had tested in their opening match and then straight onto the title. But yeah, today, Elena Rybakina beat Daria Kasatkina in the final. Jack, is Elena Rybakina back on track?
Yeah, not really. I think she was. I think she was the pretty heavy favourite for the tournament anyway. In my opinion, looking at the other seeds, Krejcikova still looking for a little bit of form. Jabeur, don't really trust her on a hard court, even if she does get the odd very good win. Kasatkina, I knew that final was going to be barely one-sided. Had a pretty good idea of that. It's a pretty bad matchup. So I don't think it tells us that much more than we already knew, Nick. I think we're kind of waiting for Rybakina to win slams, if any, this year, and that's the kind of target she'll have set herself. I think anything else, maybe a WTA 1000. Obviously, that would be really, really nice, and it's not a given she'll win one of those. But my point is, I think she needs to be doing really well at the big events for us to be like, now Rybakina's back on track.
I mean, I can see what you mean about the matchup with Kasatkina, although I don't know how they managed to go that ding-dong like match they had in Canada last year that took absolutely ages. It was an epic, really. And I mean, we'll get into it, but like the final was interesting because Rybakina did run away with the first set a bit, but the second set, Kasatkina made it difficult. Like, really, really difficult. Like, Rybakina went to break up, Kasatkina broke back, and there were lots of long rallies. And I was interested that Rybakina was trying to match Kasatkina's resilience and craftiness, and it was kind of working, but it was making them very even. And then Rybakina just broke at the latter end of that set to then take the match. So I think that says a little bit more about Kasatkina's game, what we'll get into. But I do see what you're saying, that, yeah, obviously, bigger events, we need to see how Rybakina is. Doha should be interesting. I think, given it's the week after, my concern would be that maybe she's gonna struggle a little bit more, given like what happened in Adelaide, following straight on from Brisbane. But let's see with that.
Yeah. And one note I'd make on Abu Dhabi, I do feel like normally the tournament's a little bit more loaded. I'm sure last year we probably had like 9 of the top 10 in there or something. It might have been something absurd like that. And what this year we've got Rybakina, Jabeur. That might be it. Is that it? Just the 3 players? Is there somebody I'm missing there?
3 in there as well, yeah. I mean, you've got players like Ostapenko, Haddad Meyer knocking on the door, who were there. I know last year's Abu Dhabi, Kasatkina was the top seed, Bencic was second, and Rybakina was third.
Okay, clearly not last year then. But I do feel like there was one year I was like, oh my God, this is a crazy tournament. Like, it doesn't really matter. You beat the players in front of you. There were some good players there. Samsonova was somebody who'd pigeonized Rybakina, so it was good for her to get that win finally in the 5th attempt. But again, that's my feeling. That's my feeling. I don't feel like there was anybody she really, had to beat there that she hadn't beat before. It wasn't any top 10 players that she kind of could have established a bit of a head-to-head advantage on going into slams. Again, it's all about the bigger events for me for Rybakina. She's too good a player for me to say 500 win, back on track. Nah, I don't think so.
Let's talk a little bit about Rybakina's run, though, because there were a couple of players in there that were interesting. So the Collins match right at the start, that ended up being a pretty good match. Collins threw all she had at Rybakina, and Rybakina came through it. I didn't see it. I don't know if you did. But from what I gather, that was a good win for Rybakina, given Collins kind of brought it.
Yeah, I mean, she was down a set twice down a break as well in the second set against Collins. So she scrapped. She's not, kind of like Iga. I wouldn't say those two players, Rybakina and Iga, are the players that are best known for making big comebacks. So for her to kind of grit her teeth and come through that, I feel like when something's off in their games, they're maybe not the best at finding ways to win ugly. I'm sure we can pick out certain matches for the two of them that would say otherwise, but as a general rule of thumb, I don't feel like the two of them are that good at that compared to other players. So maybe that's a little bit out of the ordinary. Maybe it shows that going into majors she'll find a way to win these matches. I mean, the one she lost to Australia, that's about the ugliest match, the ugliest, most beautiful match I can think of at the Australian Open, and Rybakina came out the other side as the loser. So maybe there's a bit more of a grittiness, we could argue, but that's about the only kind of bonus point I would say for Rybakina. It's not much has changed for me in the landscape of things.
But the other one I wanted to, you're the ideal person I want to pick your brains on about is this Samsonova matchup, because you mentioned that Samsonova had pigeonized, Rybakina hadn't won a match against her until, this week. She was 0-4 down the head-to-head. She's finally won against Samsonova. And I've struggled to work out why that was. To me, it should have been a much more even matchup, because when Samsonova's on, she can beat anyone, and I know you'd agree with that because you're really big on Samsonova. But I wasn't expecting it to take this long for Rybakina to turn it around, and even this time it took Samsonova having a bit of an off day. But what are your thoughts on that matchup?
Yeah, I used to be bigger on Samsonova, by the way. I'm slowly losing the belief a little bit. It's not been a great patch of seasons for her. I mean, she's still getting to big finals and stuff, in fairness to her, but she doesn't really have that unpredictability factor that she kind of did. I do expect the bigger players to beat her most of the time, I would say. I don't think there was much of a, it's WTA things. I don't think there was a crazy difference in matchup. And Samsonova was one of those players that is just such a big hitter. She can beat anybody, and the 4 matches they've played have been fairly close. I don't think there's anything that crazy. The only thing I might say is that Rybakina is used to a little bit more time in the ball. She is used to dictating play, and Samsonova is just not going to let you do that. So on the days that she has played her, she's not, she doesn't get as many looks in on the return, I would say. So Samsonova will go for it on the return, and she'll go for it on her next shot. So if she's feeling it on the day, Rybakina might just not have got a look at it on return, and that's maybe not what she's used to. That's the only thing I would say. But generally, you just got to give a bit of credit to Samsonova, like Ostapenko, fully capable of taking a 4-0 lead over some of the top players and then losing the next match. I wouldn't be surprised if Iga comes out and beats Ostapenko the next time they meet.
I think it would be ridiculous if Iga never beat Ostapenko.
I suppose the other thing I would say about that matchup, though, Nick, is that Ostapenko really does have a pretty good matchup differential, I guess, against Iga, and that she really doesn't like the sort of faster, harder shots. That's not the case for Rybakina necessarily. I don't think there's a matchup discrepancy so much, Nick. Just Rybakina managed to get this one when she didn't manage to get the other ones.
Yeah, which is, it's a little bit more kind of confusing, I guess. All right, well, let's go and talk a bit about Daria Kasatkina, who made the final. It's her second 500 final of the year. She made Adelaide as well. And I wanted to, I don't know if you saw that match with Haddad Maia that she had in the semi-finals, which I think Vance and James were both saying is probably the best WTA match of the year so far. Certainly the ball striking quality from both are really, really good. The obviously long rallies, really great watch. But something that's been picked up is Kasatkina seems to be playing a little bit more aggressively. I don't know if that's something you've picked up on, but what are your thoughts on Kasatkina's run and whether you're seeing any kind of changes or improvements?
Yeah, definitely a little bit more venom, I would say, in her forehand on hard courts recently. To the naked eye, it's a little tough to tell if she's flattening it out more. She might be a little bit, certainly not our forte, given how much spin she generally puts on the ball. I think maybe a little bit, but honestly, I think Kasatkina is one of those players that I was very surprised when she went on that poor run last year. Was it last year or was that 2 years ago now? Can't remember now, Nick. All these seasons blend into one. Whatever it was that Kasatkina went on that run of just like losing match after match. Honestly, whatever it was, fitness, whatever, just not feeling her game. She should 100% be beating players that are ranked below her and probably losing to players that are ranked above her. She's got that just amazing baseline. I wouldn't say she's that much of a pusher either, to be honest. Like, she can, as you say, be a bit more aggressive when she needs to. But she's got it all worked out. She's one of the craftiest tennis players out there, honestly. She's not under aggressive. She's not too consistent. I think she gets the balance perfect. So yeah, against Haddad Maia, we knew that was going to be a slog. I'm not surprised the ball striking quality was amazing. Like, it would have been amazing to. I didn't see it, Nick. I would have been amazing to watch.
I did see it, and I thought it was a really, really good match. And I was surprised no one was making, like, I wasn't seeing tweets from people going, "This is amazing." But it was nice to see James and Vance both tweeting afterwards that, that was a really good watch. And yeah, it was fantastic. And yeah, actually, Kasatkina's winner count was unusually high for her. It has to be said, but it was tight. It went to a deciding tie break. Really, really good quality battle between the two, and there wasn't. I got the sense throughout the match that Kasatkina had the edge. She definitely should have won it. It would have been real. It would have been a really good gritted out win for Haddad Maia had she got it. But
yeah, I swear, by the way, Haddad Maia is like a prime ingredient for a good match. I think she's been featured in some of the best matches of the last like 3-4 years or so. Like, she's such a good player. I really like her.
Yeah, so she's in a. Yeah, I agree, and she's knocking on the door of top. So far, seems to be at least getting 1 or 2 matches of tournament under her belt, which is what she needs.
Yeah.
I think the other kind of big talking point from Abu Dhabi is Ons Jabeur, who lost to Haddad Maia in the quarterfinals. She beat Emma Raducanu in the opening match, and Ons looked really, really good in that opening match with Emma. Outplayed her, used all her variety was there, resisted Emma's attempt at a comeback in the opening set. But then against Haddad Maia, was clearly fighting her heart out, but was also in tears just before getting decisively broken. Nothing as yet as to why, whether it's something physical, whether there's something else going on behind the scenes. It's not worth speculating because we don't know. But it's not looking good for Ons right now.
Yeah, maybe it could have been. Was she losing at that point, Nick, or she wasn't losing?
She was a set in fourth. She was a set down 4-all in the second.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it could be. I think I remember her getting. She was very upset when she lost in Monastir last year as well. Obviously, that's in Tunisia, but this, is still an Arab country, I guess. I think maybe it means a lot to her to play these tournaments and hopefully do well. So maybe there was just a feeling the match was slipping away from her and she couldn't deliver in a place that really, really meant a lot to her. It could be that, potentially, Nick. I don't know. It's a shame, but I will just go back to what I said before. I don't really trust Ons on a hardcourt. I don't think she's got that much of an edge over her fellow players, over big hitters generally. Haddad Maia is not the biggest hitter, to be fair. She's more of a consistent player, and had Jabeur been playing a bit better, I would have expected her, I guess, to get the win. But it still doesn't surprise me that she's lost there, Nick. I honestly think we could look up her hardcourt records, and I might do it just in case to back myself up. And I bet you she would be far off 50-50 for her career.
What's the point of having Jack Edward on the show when there being no stats?
Exactly, Nick. Let's get up. Let me find
Let's get up on Jabeur's hardcourt. Like, bearing in mind, we're talking about the hardcourt record of someone who made a US Open final.
Yeah, exactly. I know, and that's so. I honestly think the US Open is the outlier there. I don't think that's the norm. Like, I honestly think she carried her form from Wimbledon into that tournament, and it was a proper scrap to get there, by the way. But when she lost in the first round of the next event, it wasn't surprising at all. Right, okay, Nick, what's your guess?
So what are we guessing? Like wins, loss, or percentage?
Win percentage.
Win percentage on hardcourt?
Yeah.
54.
That seems like a good guess. Let's go. Let me just work it out. That's not far. It's not far. 59%. So I was a little harsh. 59%.
I was being a little harsh. I was like, no, it's probably going to be in the 50s. So I definitely thought it was over 50.
And what about versus top 20 players?
Top 20?
Yeah.
I'm going to guess it's lower. 36?
Pretty much spot on. 38% win rate against top 20 players on a hardcourt. And that's not surprising. The reason for that is pretty obvious. You know, she relies a lot on variety, relies on different shots and spins and speeds. But if you're on a hardcourt, everything bounces pretty true. The opponent can read it pretty easily. There's not as much kind of moving about of the player you could do on a grass court or even a clay court where the drop shot's much more effective. Yeah, you need something to be happening to the ball when it reacts to the court that's a little bit unpredictable to be able to use all this variety. And unfortunately, Jabeur's meat and potatoes, forehand serve, aren't the strongest compared to other players. So it's not surprising that she gets beat fairly regularly on hardcourts.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. You're right. The bounce on clay and grass is going to suit the kind of spins and variety that she puts in, particularly the drop shot. I guess we're about almost wrapping up on Abu Dhabi, but I did want to quickly mention Emma Raducanu. Obviously got through the first round, her first match. I was very happy to see the way she beat Bushkova. Kind of resisted Bushkova's attempts to kind of grind her out, and kind of was definitely outplaying her at points. I was liking how big she was going for her shots. It's the first time I've seen Emma going for her shots in a while. But then I felt like that she was able to compete with Ons for portions of the match, but Ons was having a good day on a hardcourt that day. Promising signs for this comeback for Emma still.
Yeah. Do I want to be harsh here? I'm not going to be too harsh. You're right. She played really well against Bushkova. So there's loads of positives there. But I think people need to let go of this idea that she's going to be at the top of the game. I think there's still a lot of British fans that are expecting that because she won a slam. And it's like, where's Emma's old level? I think we just need to let her do what she's going to do, see where she's going to get. My honest gut feeling is that she could break the top 50 fairly soon, and that might be as far as she goes. I just think, honestly, the run at the US Open was fantastic, and she 100% did play better than she has been playing since then. And there's clear signs that, you know, that's a peak that she could achieve. You know, that's what the argument people will make will be. But I think there was just there was something in the air that fortnight. I mean, for a qualifier to get through and not drop a single set, and a lot of those matches have their separate stories. I just feel like her winning a slam again is probably not going to happen. I would put a big bet on that. And I do think that she's a great player and she'll have the odd match where she plays really, really well. But I think it's unlikely from what I've seen, from the weaponry, you know, I've seen, if you compare that to other top players, that she kind of joins the top 10 or even 20. I think she's probably like 30 mark for me. That's my honest feeling, Nick. And I would love Emma to prove me wrong, but that's just my assessment of her game and where it stands and what's likely to happen with it.
I think the real test is, what is a player's peak and how often do they get anywhere near it? What's the B game like as well? Because most players will be coming through on their B game or even C. And with Emma, we know her A game is enough to compete with the best in the world to beat top 20 players. not won a top 10 player, you've been a top 10 player, but she can beat top 20. The question is that whether what her B game can produce, because when we see her B game, she's scrapping with top 40, top 50.
Yeah, I like that. I like that way of putting it, Nick. Because if your B game's not good enough, you don't win titles. You need a good enough B game to win titles. And the fortnight that she won the US Open, I don't think she ever had to draw on her B game. That was what was so weird about it. And the players she played almost let her play her A game. She had like Sorribes Tormo in the third round, absolute pusher. Love Sorribes Tormo, but she gave Raducanu the grounds to dictate that match. Shelby Rogers in the fourth round. She played one of the nerviest matches I've ever seen from a top 30, whatever the ranking she was at the time, player in my life. She just didn't appear, basically. Sakkari in the semi-finals. We know what Sakkari's like in slam semi-finals. She gets in her own head. She wasn't able to deliver. Fernandez in the final, fellow just like out of nowhere player. There's a lot of stories to that US Open run, and I don't think it's indicative of what you actually have to do to win a slam most of the time.
I read that slam run differently. I think the only player I thought played badly of the ones that she beat was Bencic.
Really? The other way around? Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah. I thought that, maybe not badly, but quarterfinal was the one match that Emma looked wobbly.
Yeah.
And gritted it out with Bencic. But I thought Sakkari tried to come out firing in that semi-final, and Emma's level surprised her. And then Fernandez, that was straight sets, but it was super competitive.
Yeah, it was
all
a good
of
match.
those two sets. It was a really, really good. The match didn't deserve to almost be 6-4, 6-3 or whatever it was. 6-2, 6-4. It was just back and forth all the way. I think a bit like with Ostapenko. Like Ostapenko was another sort of, where did that come from slam run? And she has started, and like she's shown her A game since, but not at the biggest tournaments.
Yeah,
picking it up. But now she's figured out how to be consistent.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Consistent at her A game. You're right. Yeah. She just doesn't draw her. She doesn't have a B game. She just never ever. When she does, she's like losing to top. What was it like? She almost lost to that 700 franc player. Not to slight the 700 franc player. I'm sure she's a good player, but Ostapenko at her best. I mean, that it shows you just the peaks and troughs of that A game are mad.
So should we just say that Emma Raducanu's B game is higher than Jelena Ostapenko's B game?
Yeah, 100% is. 100% is. And yeah, look, Nick, I feel like sometimes people maybe are just like, what are you talking about when I say this sort of stuff about Emma? But honestly, it's been, coming up for 3 years now. By the time it gets to the US Open, when did she win the US Open? 2021?
2021, yeah. But she is also... She won it when she was 18. She's still a developing player.
She is. That's kind of what I mean. Like, just see what happens. But don't use the US Open as a benchmark.
I'm certainly not predicting Emma to win another slam in 2024. The landscape doesn't allow for it.
Yeah.
Really. You've got Iga, Elena, Arena, and Coco who've got it kind of locked down, and someone's got to have to prove that they can join them. And the level they're setting is so high that very few people can consistently do that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it'd be fair to expect Emma to do the same. I feel the same about Osaka right now.
Yeah. That'll be interesting to see where that goes, but I agree with you. Definitely. Yeah. Should we move on to the next tournament, Nick?
So before we preview Qatar, I just want to quickly talk about Cluj, because there are two stories from Cluj I think worth talking about. One, Karolina Pliskova won it. First title in 4 years, which is incredible. I know that, I think she had a load of opportunities in 2021. I know that she got to all those finals. She got to the Wimbledon final, Rome final, Canada final. A player of her caliber who's been former world number one, 2 Grand Slam finals. I am surprised that it's taken her this long to win another title. And she did it without being seeded at a 250, which I remember saying last week was just sounded mental to me, that Karolina Pliskova was at a point in her career where she wasn't seeded for a 250. Yeah,
she's been a very odd player recently, hasn't she? used to expect so much of her, and then just in kind of the blink of an eye, all of a sudden we were kind of expecting her. She could lose to anybody, who knew basically. I think Juan Ignacio did a really good tweet. I'll just get that up. It's the second longest run for a former world number one to win consecutive titles in history. I think 1,491 days. So yeah, literally just over 4 years, which is a fair while. The longest was Martina Hingis, which was between 2002 Tokyo to 2006 Rome.
Which was a weird setup anyway, because Hingis didn't play for 2 or 3 years during that.
Yeah. So yeah, different story to Pliskova. I think Pliskova's is more of an oddity, I would say. And that just what happened. She's just got this amazing. She's got such a good game. It's unreal. And to be fair, although she won that title in 2020, it was Brisbane. I do think her best level did still come after that. When she got to the final against Barty at Wimbledon, for example, I thought the level she brought to that tournament was insanely good. That was the best you can see from Pliskova. And by the way, the fact she hadn't made a grass court final previous to that was just like, what is going on? Or was it just Wimbledon maybe? I don't know. But she hadn't got past the second round at Wimbledon, I think.
Yeah.
It was just absolutely odd to me. She's got the perfect game for it. Flat strokes even. Big serve. Yeah, it's good to see her back, Nick. It's good to see her back. She's such a good player when she's on her best. And I do think she's a little bit unique in that her serve is like a proper weapon when it's on, and she hits very flat shots in a different way from other players. She's got a very, I don't know, it's hard to describe it. It's just like a cannon, basically, for a shot. It's like as flat as a pancake, basically.
When she's on, she's brilliant. But having such a flat game has its risks.
Yeah.
Of course. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves, because there was no one in the top 40 in that tournament. So let's not get too carried away. But I think Pliskova has kind of demonstrated that she has at least a top 50 level in her still. But she's consistently bringing her higher level less and less and less. But I think it's a good news story for her, and I'm really glad that she's ended that title drought, because it was ridiculous. And like, she even mentioned it in her on-court interviews that it's been a while and she really, really wanted it. The other story from Cluj I wanted to get your view on, as a fellow Brit, Harriet Dart, first WTA semi-final, back in the top 100. We've got 3 Brits at the top 100 now. A little bit. I mean, I don't think it was out of nowhere, because I've been seeing her climbing back up the rankings a little bit. But I thought that was a really good run. I don't know if it's repeatable. It might be like Katie Swan a couple of years ago at that 250 in Asia. But I thought Harriet looked quite good this week. Yeah,
honestly, Harriet Dart's a great player, actually. I think a lot of that it stemmed from her kind of run, or her wins even that she got at the end of 2022 when she was doing so well at the Billie Jean King Cup, and she's beaten all these really, really big players, and it seems like her peak's absolutely fantastic. I do think maybe her weaponry, though, just it doesn't quite reach the peaks that would allow her to break the top 20, for example. Again, kind of like Emma, I think she could make top 50. I think she's a good enough player for that, honestly. I honestly am not sure why she's not, because at her best, you're kind of like, everything just looks so clean. There's not really any danger of her missing a lot of the time, but she's still able to hit the ball like really, really purely. Maybe her serve's not the biggest, but there's loads of WTA players who don't have the biggest serves and still have, the most immaculate ground game that allow them to break this sort of top 50. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why she's not as high ranked as she is. And it's good to see her doing well. I honestly think she could continue, kind of like Emma. I think the two of them deserve to be in the top 50 at least. So hopefully she can keep up this kind of momentum and keep going, Nick.
Yeah. Look, let's see. I think, Dart's got the potential to bring some entertainment and some good news for British tennis fans. But that doesn't need to be too much of a deep conversation. I just wanted to throw it out there because I think she was one of the stories of Cluj. All right, so let's move on, because we are now into 1000 season in the WTA. We are heading for the Middle East double. I don't know if it's actually called that, but it's what I'm calling it. And we are into Doha, where We've got it's obviously it's 1,000, so the big players are there, but we are missing some notable names. Mukova pulled out, which is disappointing, but the other missing name is Arina Sabalenka, which I was a little bit surprised by, but maybe she needs a little bit more time to recover from Australia. But yeah, this is Iga Swiatek going for her third consecutive Doha title, back on court and looking to right some wrongs from Australia.
Yeah, trying to just piece together which one was what. So we had the one 2 years ago against Peak Contivate, right? And then we had last year. So that was the last 1,000. And then we had the 500 last year, yeah, against Jess. She's untouchable at Doha. I honestly think that's one of the tournaments that should just be like Iga's from the word go. They might as well just give it to her now because the conditions are beautiful for her. They're so good, just because it's like very, very sea level, very, very heavy air, very good for spin. I think every ball she hits will feel like a bullet, or not a bullet, something heavy, the opposite of that, Nick. You get the idea, though. A bowling ball is what I should have went for. It should be very heavy for the opponent, just very easy to get overpowered in those conditions. Barring any kind of Iga nerves or lack of confidence, she should take the title.
Well, her opening round against Sorana Castella, so that should be a good matchup for her. I think the one that Iga fans are going to be slightly worried about is whether Ostapenko makes the quarterfinals, because Ostapenko's in that section.
Well, that's great news for Iga, because that is a very good chance for her to get her first win against Ostapenko. I think that, again, it should be good conditions for her. It'll be a little harder for Ostapenko to hit through the court in slower conditions. Let's actually have a little look. I haven't looked at the Iga Penko head-to-head for a wee while. I want to see what
0-4 for Ostapenko.
I knew it was 4-0, but I was wondering what where they played. If they played somewhere this slow in the past, basically. So looking at all of them,
US Open last year, and then before that was Dubai in 22. The match before the streak kicked off. That was the last 2 times they played, and I don't know what the other 2 were.
So the other 2 were Birmingham, grass courts, and then Indian Wells. So Indian Wells is about your slowest there, and fair enough. Maybe that is a match that Iga possibly could have been winning. It was 6-4, 6-3 in the end. It was 2021. So to be fair, that's before Iga really took off. She's still a good player at that point, but that was before 2022 when she went into God mode. Nowadays, I would say in a slower hard court, she should be the favourite. And I mean, they've had close matches. The Dubai one was 7-6 in the third. The last one they played at the US Open, of course, still 3 sets, and Iga had her chances and then kind of went away in the third set. But that was quick. It was quick conditions. I honestly think in slower conditions, especially if you see the odds online, I might be putting a wee bet on that, because I think Iga could end up being the non-favourite there. And even if it's slight, I do think she should be considered the favourite.
As an Iga fan, obviously I want to see that, because it's the 0-4 record is bothering me, and I would like to see at least one win in that head-to-head. And I think, as I said before, I don't think anyone beats Iga 5 times in a row. Might be my words. I don't know. The other question, of course, is whether Ostapenko makes it, because we know how Ostapenko is. She's hot for one tournament and then off the next. Ostapenko would have either Raducanu or Kalinina in her opener. I would expect her to win whichever, depending on depending whether she's playing her A or her B game. Then she's potentially got third round against either Haddad Maia or Azarenka. Azarenka, we know how she is against. Haddad Maia, could be. That's the one I don't know which way to call it.
Yeah, they're not givens, are they? There's absolutely not 100% certainty that Ostapenko makes the quarters. Honestly, whatever happens, I don't think Iga will really mind. I just honestly, the conditions are just so lovely for her. I remember in particular when she played Contivate, who, to be fair, was like only really peaking indoors, but she was still playing amazingly. She just didn't stand a chance. Like, even the 2 games that she won, it was just constantly getting overpowered. Didn't matter what she threw at her. And Iga, let's not forget, Iga's actually playing well. I think everybody looks at the headline, lost at the Australian Open, but she'd won 3 tournaments on the bounce, is that right? Or 2 on the bounce. Before that, she was playing very well, and she still is playing very well. And I would expect her in great conditions to continue to play very well, Nick.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Iga is the favourite here. Doesn't mean she's going to win, but I think she's the more likely player to win in the current field. If Sabalenka was in the field, it'd be a different question.
Yeah, I think so too.
I mean, PR's kind of saying, well, Rybakina, but we said earlier, like, it depends if Rybakina's still got energy to make it through. I actually think a young quarterfinal could be a problem for her.
Yeah, and I think, again, a little slower. Rybakina doesn't really matter for her because she's got such a big game, and on hard courts as well, that serve's still going to do a lot of damage. I'd call it about 50-50, especially if she's been a bit tired. Rybakina, when she's just a little slower around the court, certainly on the backhand, starts to spray a bit, or on both sides, to be honest. If she's just a little bit hampered, then things can get a bit ugly for her. So yeah, that's what Charlie's saying there. Loses the energy quickly. That's what it starts to look like. It's a little bit harder for her to keep up with her opponent. So I would certainly not the favourite, Nick. I mean, come on. I don't know what discourse has been spread there, but Iga has to be the favourite. Has to be the favourite.
Yeah, especially given that in all likelihood the finals against Gauff, who we know about that matchup, is very much favourable for Iga. I think Coco's got a very good opportunity of making the final, though. Looking at her draw, she's got Siniakova in her opener, then either Collins, Bushkova, or Kenin in the third round. That could be a tricky one, but then once she gets through it, I think she's going to have an advantage over whoever she plays in the quarters.
Did she not? Did she play Collins at Doha once, and it was a Gavin?
But then this is a new Coco.
Oh, I think you said Collins. Sorry, Coco.
Yeah, Coco. Yeah.
Oh, Coco's always going to be a problem. Yeah, nowadays Coco's definitely always going to be a problem. Doesn't matter the fact that Iga's got a very heavy head-to-head against her. I still think it could be tough. But she'd be the favourite. I think I talked to you once about the crazy matchup differences between Iga and Coco, and that pretty much every time Iga should be considered the heavy favourite, especially in slower conditions. Yeah, if that matchup does happen, then Iga's still the heavy favourite for me. Somebody else as well, sorry, I know this is Charlie again, saying in the comments, Ostapenko won the French Open on clay, slow conditions. I think the fact is, going into this tournament, everybody's looking at that potential Iga-Ostapenko quarterfinal because most of us are thinking Iga's the favourite. I would say Ostapenko's not bad in slow conditions. I didn't say that at any point. Like Rybakina, she's got a big enough game that it doesn't really matter what the conditions are like a lot of the time. But I more think the boost for Iga in these conditions is going to be pretty overwhelming. It's not about Ostapenko being worse. It's about Iga being better, for sure. That makes her the heavy favourite for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I know that we probably need to wrap up very shortly. So I just want to ask you one last question, which is like about the round one headline match, which everyone jumped on when the draw came out. And there's a few really, really good runs in this draw, by the way, some of which already happened. But the one that everyone's talking about is that rematch of Osaka and Garcia from the Australian Open. And I just want to know, Statman, what chance are you giving Ostapenko of avenging? What chance are you giving Osaka of avenging that?
I'm going to say Garcia wins that, I think. A little slower. Again, one of those players that, again, like Ostapenko, Rybakina, still hits the ball so cleanly and big from the back of the court that it doesn't make too much of a difference. But it's more about form. I do think that Osaka's still got a little bit of a step behind the other players at the moment. I think she'll get it back, but it's probably still too early for her to be beating players of Garcia's caliber. Even if Garcia isn't the most reliable nowadays, I still think when she's on, especially against a top player in a first round with plenty of energy, she probably will bring her A game, and I think that'll be a little too much at this stage of the comeback for Naomi Osaka.
There we go. I would agree with that. I think Osaka needs to get an easier draw at some point to play herself into form, and she's been getting some toughies recently. What with Pliskova, Garcia, whoever she had in Abu Dhabi. All right. Well, thanks, Jack, for coming on. Hope you enjoyed that. I hope you're looking forward to Doha and you catch as much as possible. But you're on duty at the Glasgow Challenger this week, aren't you?
I am, yeah. So if anybody fancies it, I'll be hosting on Saturday and Sunday. at Scotstoun in Glasgow. Maybe we've got some Glaswegian viewers today. I don't know. It should be a good laugh. We've got a good field. There's some good players there. Hopefully, I'm fingers crossed. I'm not biased at all, genuinely, because it's a Belgian player. But we've got Alexander Blocks in the draw, who's a very, very interesting, exciting up-and-comer. I'm hoping we get him in the final. So 100% should come down if he does manage to get through the draw.
There we go. Plugging the Challenger Tour. Everyone's going to wonder if this is ATP Weekly with Damien. Right. Well, and talking of ATP Weekly, that is coming up. Keep an eye on the channel for our ATP roundup from the week with Damien and hopefully Mario if he's feeling better. Thanks, Jack, for coming on. Follow Jack on the line and listen to his podcast when he eventually does another episode. We'll catch you soon during the week, and of course we'll be back next week for more WTA Weekly to wrap up everything that's happened in Doha. I'm looking forward to everything that's going to come up. I'll catch you then. Till then, take care and keep talking tennis.
Cheers, Nick.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.